All right, so this
Cool.
is episode 43 of Both Laugh, the Dying Scene Quarantine Chat Show. As always, I am Jay Stone, and I don't know how we made it to 43 episodes, but people that are really cool keep saying yes to talking to me. So
Yeah.
we'll keep doing it for as long as people want to do it. I am thrilled to be joined by today's guest. You know her, you love her. She's been in bands for the last 15 years. She's got a new solo EP that we'll talk about at length. Suzi Moon, thanks for doing this.
Hi, thanks for having me, Jay.
I feel like a talk show host when I do an intro like that, and it makes me
You're
feel
great at it,
super
though.
weird. But yeah, I
I
just,
hear you, but you have to have an intro because it's like, this is it. This is the
yeah.
start. Let's get everybody,
Well, I
in the
started
room.
like a year. Well, it's 14 months ago now, I think, doing these, and we were just doing them over Instagram Live because I thought it was sort of a interesting thing. I didn't have to put much thought or effort into it, which is
Yeah.
usually the way that I want to do things. But then like people's Wi-Fi would suck, or people's Instagram would drop out, or they'd get frozen. And so doing them over Zoom became a better idea. Then I said, well, if I'm going to do them over Zoom, then I should do like a podcast. And then I'm a 40-year-old bearded white guy, so of course I have a podcast. And
Of course.
we all do.
No, but I mean, I feel like, you have to go through that, to get to where you are now. And there is success with the show. People love the show. But I did the same thing when I started this Rockin' Closets show, like earlier this year. And same thing, I was like, cool, Instagram Live, 1 hour of my life, no editing involved. And then I lost an entire episode because of someone's bad connection, and you're like, shit, it's not worth it to waste that time, somebody else's time too, to get on and to chat with you and stuff.
Yeah.
So then you're like, now you're getting ring lights, now you got the intro, now you're editing.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, and it's taken on a life of its own.
Yeah, I definitely, if people scroll back through the archives, you'll notice that episode 8 is missing. That's because that was Miguel from Teenage Bottle Rocket, and we had a great conversation about yoga and spirituality and meditating and like staying sane during COVID. And when I went to save it, I was paying attention to something my daughter was saying, so I wasn't paying attention to my phone, and I'm an airhead. And I fat thumbed it, and it disappeared. So it was a good conversation. Oh, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's like the
missing
soul
episode
rips out. Yeah.
I know.
So thanks for doing this. The way that I start most episodes, and I guess I'll keep doing it because we keep going back into these sort of lockdown, increased restriction things. I was hoping we'd be done with that by now, but when I started doing this, it was to talk to people that had plans that were canceled during COVID, and then sort of pivoted to people that were doing things to stay connected and stay creative and all that during COVID. So what would the last year and a half have looked like for you if COVID hadn't happened? Where do you think, what did you have lined up, and where do you think you'd be now?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because nothing in my life tends to go as planned anyway.
Right.
Try as I might to lay really good plans, the universe is like, no, we're going to do it this way instead.
Right.
So last year, 2020, which is like almost like the year that didn't happen. Right. It's so weird because I'll think about, I go back to 2019 because it's the last year I remember things happening.
Right. Right.
It's such a trip, but I was playing with a band called Machina.
Right.
We were a 3-piece kind of heavy stoner rock band, and we had an album recorded, finished. We were supposed to go to Europe for July and August, and then of course that all got canceled, and then that band split up by October. So even if we had done that tour, or whatever, I think that band was always meant to be short-lived anyway. Like that was just the nature of the group and the personalities involved. Like now that I look at it from the other side, it's like, shit, well, I'm glad we didn't go too much farther into that because it would have been a lot more work to clean up at the end. But I mean, I was having a great time with that band, and it was really cool for me to do something different, playing bass, that's not my main instrument, and even just not being really the front person, but kind of just like getting in the pocket, chilling
Yeah.
back and like hanging out. That was really fun for me.
Yeah, that's a
And I
very different
learned,
responsibility for you.
yeah, it's like way less responsibility.
Well, right.
And I loved it, you know, and I was having a really good time with that. But shit just fucking happened the way it happened. And I had to roll with the punches. And we were already, you know, totally in lockdown and stuff. And October was like, well, there were no touring opportunities. I was a little bit confused as to what my next move was going to be. But, and here's one of those magical things, like last August, I went into the studio with Davey Warsop from Sharp Shock. He's an old buddy of mine from when he was in Beat Union and I was in Civet. We did a tour together, you know, so we go way back and we've been talking about recording together for ages. And I was like, well, shit, I've got these songs. They're definitely not LA Machina songs. They're totally not Turbulent Hearts songs. Cause like for me, like as a songwriter, you know, like you want things to match the certain project that you're in, you know, and it's not that these are softer in any way. It's just maybe more, for me, it was a step like out of like the crazy girl thing of Turbulent Hearts that I felt really, really stuck in, you know, and then for LA Machina, that had to be like a certain level of like hard, you know, kind of rock stuff. So like, Davey, let's just do that. Let's do that record that we talked about. I've got 10 songs and I don't know, I'll put them on SoundCloud or something. It'll be great, you know? And then LA Machina fell apart and I started chatting with Veek at Pirates Press and she was like, well, send me these songs that you have, you know? And I sent her some of the songs and they were like, we love them. Let's do this. And I'm like, oh shit. And they're like, let's do an EP first before the full length. And I was like, okay. I had songs that I had done basic tracks with Ricky Styx, like another batch of songs that were maybe going to be LA Machina songs, but never made it that far, you know? And so those 3 songs that were already mostly done, those became Call the Shots. And then I kept working with Davey to finish the 10 song full length, you know? And it was like, oh shit. All of a sudden I went from being in one band and having that my main priority to all of a sudden, I guess I'm doing the solo thing I thought about for a long time, but didn't really have the guts to do, you know, like it just became time instead of me being like, this is my grand scheme. You know, it was like, oh no, I guess we're just doing this because I didn't have Turbulent Hearts anymore. And I didn't have LA Machina. And it was like, but I am Suzi Moon. So let's just do this shit and see what happens. And the response was like really, really, really positive, you know, and I got an amazing new band, a killer backup band, like, and I didn't even have those guys when I did the music video for Special Place in Hell. Like the first single off of, I was just making shit up as I went along. It was like, okay, I got a label, check. There's a vinyl coming out, check. Totally wouldn't have planned for any of this. And then it was like, I need a music video. Great, I'll do a music video. And then I did the second music video. Still had never played with my backing band. I just kind of like started, you know, talking to them and working out like who I wanted to be in this band with, you know? And like now we just released the 3rd single and I have my band and we're fucking tight. And it's really exciting, you know, for even in this like last year, how much that has changed. And now there's like a real crew behind my songs. Instead, it was just me kind of like making shit happen with what I had available to me, which is a lot, like I've operated that way many times, you know, in music, you kind of just have to go with the flow and say yes first and figure out details later, you know, but like shit, we're about to go on tour in September, just a little tour, you know, and then another mini tour in November. And then we're going to do a full US tour in April, fingers crossed.
Just going to say fingers crossed.
Yeah, that we're allowed to go anywhere, you know, but now again, I'm laying down plans and we'll see what surprises show up along the way. But I don't know. I had no clue any of this was coming.
Does it feel different having a physical product out that's just your name at the top versus Turbulent Hearts, for example? Because I mean, you were the face of and the voice of Turbulent Hearts, so it seems like that's a Suzi Moon project, but now this is just Suzi Moon. Does it feel different having like having called the shots again, I feel like a talk show host. I should superimpose it.
Hey,
behind
look.
me, right? Does it feel
You could
different?
win this vinyl or a brand new dishwasher.
Right.
You're like, dishwasher.
Except they're not getting that because that's mine and I have to keep it. Does it feel different having it come out and it's just your name? Is it more pressure or is it more gratifying or both?
It's definitely both. It's like this weird mix of both, there's another level of anxiety involved with like putting your name on it. Whereas like Turbulent Hearts, maybe most people didn't know that those were like my songs and like this kind of thing. Like it was essentially the Suzi Moon project with training wheels on it, where I was just kind of getting comfortable fronting a band after Civet, bringing my songs to other people, having them help me get better and make them better, but like always with the vision, like the vision is a big part of music for me. It's like, I love to come up with the concepts and the videos and the whole package, because I think that's very stimulating and exciting. And it's what draws me to certain artists, like when they have, something fun to look at too, but definitely when you're doing that, it's like, well, if somebody doesn't like it, they're literally calling you out by name,
right.
And that's scary. It's definitely scary, but it's really empowering too, because I'm 32 now, which might not seem like, and I know it's not old, but I've been playing music since I was 14, 15, so it's like I'm finally fucking 32, Jesus Christ. Like it took forever to get here. And you have to go through a lot of failures and a lot of scary moments to like have the confidence to just be like, well, you know what? I honestly don't really give a fuck if anyone likes it anyway. I want people to, but at the end of the day, I just have to write the music that comes through me. And, that's, to me, that feels like my gift, something I have to work on all the time, and want to, and like, it comes naturally to me. And it's like, yeah, you do it less and less for like approval of other people and more just like, shit, fuck, hell yeah, I want to look super sexy on the cover of my record. Why? Because it's my record. And I'll be 80, and laughing, and like bringing all the little great grandchildren around and be like, let me show you how cool I was. At least that's the idea, is that like you're trying to at least create something that you're proud to call like your legacy. So if I'm not doing things that are scary for me or trying new things or going, sure, Pirates Press, I will make all those things happen and I will get them done on time. All of that shit, that's like really like the joyful part of the journey, is like making shit happen when you're not really exactly sure, it's like, it's fun.
Well, and I feel like especially over the last year or year and a half, to have a project like that you can really sort of dive into and keep yourself going is huge.
Totally. Yeah. Thank goodness. Like I'm very, very grateful to have something to keep me busy, like even just over here, let me see if I can show you guys really quick. I have my little setup because, well, I'm kind of broke right now, but that doesn't mean I can't repurpose old patches. And like I made a stencil to make little lightning bolts, and I'm going to make handmade Suzi Moon patches, because I mean, I'm still doing a lot of stuff DIY just out of necessity, and there's a time and a place to get really sexy embroidered patches with a dope logo, but I'm playing a festival in September, and I think that other punk rockers appreciate a little handmade something too, so it's like having little projects like that, or like coming up with the artwork for Call the Shots, and setting up the photo shoot, and like having a vision and then knocking it out and then worrying about the mixes and the mastering and like booking things and being your own manager and social media manager and all of that stuff. It's like a full-time gig. It really, really is. And I'm way too much of a control freak to let anybody do any of it for me.
Well, then you've got a good situation.
It's rewarding.
The songs that you picked for Call the Shots, the 3 songs that are on there, you said you recorded what, like 10 altogether with Davey?
So there's 13 total that are done. 3 of those are Call the Shots, and then there's 10 that were for a record. it's kind of a weird timeline, honestly.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe it. The first thing I started recording was these 3 songs that are on Call the Shots, because they were potentially going to go to Machina.
Gotcha.
They never made it that far, you know?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I was like, cool, putting those in a pile. Then separately, I did 10 songs with Davey.
Gotcha.
And that's all like self-contained. That's a full-length record, right? But I'm going into the studio this weekend and doing 3 more songs that are the newest of all of the songs that are going to come out before the full length, because then this new idea came about to kind of have like a companion EP to Call the Shots before putting a full record out there. Because I am still technically like a newer artist for people who haven't gotten to know me as Suzi Moon, or they're like, oh, I've seen that chick in that band, or man, she's been around in that band. But like, to identify with me as a solo artist and recognize me as a songwriter and as a front woman in this way, I don't know. I thought that doing another little EP and throwing out some singles, you know, just to keep people stoked on the project and then have them bite into a full record.
It's totally like, it's like how the bands used to do it in the 70s and the 80s, the early punk rock bands, where they would do 7 inches all the time, or a couple 7 inches in an EP a year, and then maybe every couple of years, like a compilation and a few new songs, and that's a full length. It's totally, it's a throwback mentality that way.
Good. I'm glad that's what
I think
you're
so.
thinking of it as. Yeah. And, you know, Pirates Press Records, they've got a really great vision, and they help, you know, steer my course. I'm always asking for advice on things, and like, I trust them so much, because they know what does well, what times of year things do well, you know, and they've been just the most incredibly supportive and encouraging label, like dream label. So yeah, I think that doing another 3 songs, it can't hurt, you know, and I can't wait. So
will you have the new band on the new songs?
Yeah.
That's pretty exciting.
It'll be our first recording together. Like, I'm so excited.
I know you, the songs that were on Call the Shots were going to be sort of for LA Machina, but did they change, knowing that LA Machina wasn't going to happen? Did the sound of those songs change a little bit? Because there's a different vibe between LA Machina and Suzi Moon. So
we switched some stuff up. We definitely did. So they've got Ricky Sticks on them as drums, because her drums that she laid down were just so good. You know, we were playing together so much, and we're still really, really close. She was like, fuck yeah, like, please use those drums. I want them to be heard, you know? And I'm like, great. So now we need to find another way to make them a little less machinified and more Suzi Moon style, which, you know, I take a lot of inspiration from, like Dead Boys and Stooges, and like a little bit more of that like harder, dirty 77 kind of punk rock. So that's where you'll hear like the little piano note on I'm Not a Man, you know? And Drew, who plays guitar in my band, he's the lead guitar player. He can play piano, like, it actually, you know. I cannot play piano. And so he went to go lay down the little track, and we're all like, I don't know, it sounds too good, you know. Like, you're on. It's got to be off just slightly. So I'm like, I'll do it, you know. Let's go over there. I'm like, ding, 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 ding. And you know it's not perfect, but like those little weird moments kind of like, you know, bring an energy to them. And with his guitar playing and changing the solos that, and kind of previously there was an idea for, and then adding in more of like heavily like Steve Jones influence, kind of like more rock and roll guitar. And like, fuck, I mean, I love Call the Shots, that's my little baby, but like the second EP, we're not fucking around, you know. Like, and all of my players had more room to really, for them to call the shots on how they sound, instead of before I was just kind of making it work, you know. I'm like, oh shit, can you fix the guitars, and we'll leave my bass on and Ricky's drums and take off these backing vocals, we need to make it harder, more masculine, you know. So it was really just kind of, it wasn't like I went in there and was like, this is a Suzi Moon EP. Who was like, oh shit, I have a lot of tracks. We're going to turn it into one. But this second one is really start to finish recording process, like a more realistic example of like what we are as a live band, as a real band, now. So it's really exciting.
Will the little I know you're doing like a long weekend sort of run, including Camp Punksylvania, which sounds like it's going to be a good time. I'm working that weekend, so I can't.
Oh, dang.
It's one of those things where I sort of feel like I live close enough because I'm in the Northeast that maybe I could do that, but I'm working that weekend. So
sure.
But will those
Whereabouts are you?
I live in Massachusetts, just north of Boston.
Okay, yeah, it's still just anything past New York to get to Pennsylvania. It's kind of like a long drive.
It's like middle, because I just drove to Pittsburgh a weekend ago, and it's
for your venture.
Middle of nowhere. You have to, because you have to drive through the middle of nowhere to get to Pittsburgh. But will that be the first shows for this lineup?
It will be, yeah. So the first one is actually Philly, which is cool because that's where my dad's from. So it's
awesome,
very interesting and full circle, to get to play Philly for the first ever show, especially being an LA girl, but doing a lot of East Coast stuff. And then we'll play Brooklyn, fingers crossed, and then Camp Punksylvania. So, and then we go, well, shit, we got a couple crazy weeks. Like we're going to the studio next weekend. Then I go back to LA to shoot the second EP cover and the album cover, because art for everything needs to be done and turned in very soon. And then a music video, and then coming back, we're going straight to the studio. And then we go on the mini tour. And then it's going to be like, all right, tie up loose ends and stuff for the 2 records, and then 2022, if like everything is kind of chill, then it should be a pretty massive year. There should be a lot to do and a lot of shows to play.
Do you like doing all the artwork and the music videos yourself? You do a really cool job, and not a lot of people do good music videos nowadays. So do you like doing all that yourself?
I do. Yeah.
Where did that come from? That's been a while that you've been doing that, right?
Yeah. So that was like a weird kind of also out of necessity sort of skill that I picked up. But after Civet broke up, I was like I just turned 22. I think
that's wild to me.
Yeah. Well, I was always the youngest one in the group, and looking up to everybody, but like they had just kind of done, like I graduated high school early. There were a lot of things I didn't get to do that are like pretty like normal types of things, and so mentally I was pretty fucked. But after like 8 years of touring and not ever kind of being stable, because when you're on the road so much and you come back and it's like you're either crashing at someone's place or on a couch, or you're back at your mom's house, and like not keeping like a steady job. It's kind of weird. And I really wanted to like push all of that away and just have a really simple life for a little while. So I signed up for community college and I got an apartment in Hollywood, and I just started working some job, and I was like, I have a routine,
right.
This is what I do. But I still wanted to do something creative, and I've always been interested in acting and movies, and I did a lot of acting when I was a kid. So I went for filmmaking to LA Community College, the LACC, and that's where I fell in love with editing and actually being on the computer and making all the cuts and stuff, and doing really weird like art films. And they weren't great, but I had so much fun making them and calling my friends in to be like female gangsters in this like hotel room heist with the money and the briefcase, stupid, like, we've watched a lot of Tarantino films, kind of like early filmmaker shit, but I really enjoyed it. And then I got the itch to start playing music again. And that's when I put together Turbulent Hearts in like 2014. And a girlfriend of mine, she was dating this guy who was like a professional videographer. He had a nice camera. So he was like, you direct, I'll shoot it all really nicely, and then you can edit everything. And I was like, wow, we're really doing this, So we had the lights, and I made the storyboard and had the whole thing. And I love directing. I love, because it's the ideas again. It always goes back to having ideas for how I want something to look. And I was like hooked from that point on. I've made a shitload of videos for Turbulent Hearts, and even on the few that I haven't, because I've got great friends who are super talented, and I think you should always work with those people too, because there are so many people do it better than I do, like way better, and they've got nice cameras and shit, But there's something about like a DIY punk, video
Right.
that, you know, when it comes to having content on your page and just not spending a lot of money, why not just do it yourself? You know, it's like a really powerful tool. And yeah, so you'll be seeing more of those always, because when I've only got 2 hours and my band's all in one place at one
Right.
time, I'm like,
Right.
we're making a video.
Right.
Okay, we're doing it right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a blessing and a curse to be doing that in the punk rock scene, because like you said, you're not going to make a lot of money doing it or making big budget videos for somebody else, but you're also in the one scene where you can make a cool ass video by yourself in a couple hours.
Oh
And
yeah, totally.
and people are going to think, wow, that's awesome. That's a DIY thing. Like, so
Yeah.
it's sort of this weird double-edged sword. As a pretend photographer, I sort of get it. I
Are
go
you
to,
also a pretend photographer?
oh yeah, pretend concert photographer, yeah. And
Yeah,
then
I bet you're so much better than you even give yourself credit for.
that's probably true, because in my brain I still don't know how to use a camera, and
I call myself like a hobbyist
Yeah.
photographer, but I've shot like quite a few album covers.
Yeah,
You know?
I just
But
shot my
like,
second or third one, yeah.
right? So you're legit.
I don't know what I'm doing. I literally just
I
made money
know.
on something, and I won't talk about it because it's not announced yet, but I just made money for
Yeah.
the first time taking pictures of something, like for an album cover.
How incredible.
And I was like, yeah, but that's me.
Congratulations.
I'm not a photographer. I have a camera.
I know.
But then
I
because
know.
I have good friends who are really, really good photographers and have multiple really expensive cameras, and they're super artsy, and it's awesome. And I always look up to them. And I just shot my first show back from quarantine at the beginning of July. And I had to kind of remind myself how to use the camera again. Like, oh, I forget how to shoot an indoor show and how the lighting is going to affect me. It's weird. Yeah.
Yeah. I still, to this day, I can't remember what all the numbers really mean, because I don't like numbers. I don't want to fuck with numbers. But I took those classes in school, and I did well on them then, you know, but now I'm just like, I don't know, I'm just going to mess with the ISO. I think it should be lower than the other thing.
Yeah.
And then it's like, but I feel like it's kind of like recording music, right? You don't have to be the best fucking guitar player. You don't have to have the best gear in the world. It comes through you, you know, and the equipment responds to your energy. And if you have a vision and a passion, you know, and an eye or an ear for it, like, you can still create incredible art. And sometimes it's even better because, you know, it's not being taken too seriously. You're just doing it for the love of it, you know? So yeah, I can't wait to see what you have coming up soon. Like, I want to check that out.
Yeah, hopefully I get to shoot shows. Hopefully they still happen, because
I know
there's a few in the fall that I'm looking forward to, but I don't know.
I know, it's just like, it's so weird. We went to Hell and Mega Tour the other night.
Oh, yeah.
And saw Green Day. Fall Out Boy had to cancel because somebody in their crew had COVID.
Yeah.
So they were off the show, you know, but just being around that many people and being at a concert, like, I had a little like, oh, this is beautiful.
I definitely, I went to a show at House of Blues in Boston at the beginning of July, and it started as a fundraiser for a guy local scene guy. He played in a bunch of hardcore bands. He was in Bane for a while, and he had been sick with pancreatic cancer. So it started as like a fundraiser of a bunch of his friends' bands. Bouncing Souls played, local band Rebuilder played, and H2O played, Sick of It All played. And Bane was going to play, and it was going to be like this fundraiser for him. He passed away the week before the show. So then it became like this real heavy, and his family was there, and there's like 2,200 kids there. It was like, it was a powerful first show back. It was a little overwhelming at times.
And like a memorial too.
Yeah, it was essentially like a wake in some ways, you know, like it was scheduled to be a benefit, and Bane was going to play for the first time in 5 years, and they did, just without him. And they had his bass just like on a stand in front of his cab, and I was like,
that's heavy. Yeah, especially with everything else combined, and just those feelings, you know. But what a beautiful night to get to spend with other people and just celebrate him and feel the music together. And I'm sure, you know, wherever he was,
Yeah.
like that energy reached him for
Yeah.
sure. Because that's just all love.
Yeah, and you sort of had to shut that part of your brain off that said, remember, it's like COVID's still a thing out there.
I know.
Like, okay, just let's get through tonight. Let's get through tonight.
That's it. I keep saying that. All I have to do is get through today. Seriously,
Right.
like, you know, if I work out and don't go crazy on my boyfriend, and you know, just take care of the little things I have to do, like, and some tiny progress. You know,
Yeah.
like you can only do so much too. Like right now, and probably part of the reason I like didn't really register that today was Tuesday,
Yeah,
day of
right.
our meeting,
Right.
right? Is because I'm still stuck on Friday. And you know, and when the EP came out, I was doing like multiple podcasts a week. I was on camera for Rockin' Closets. I was doing all this stuff. So it was like bam, 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 bam. But then, you know, an album's out for a little while and it just kind of fades off, you know, and I'm already looking towards the next thing. But it's like this weird in between time where I'm not so super busy with the musical stuff, you know, or at least promotion type stuff or press stuff, that like my little monkey brain completely forgot. And I went back to watching Reno 911, you know? And so it's just, you gotta, you know, I'm just grateful to have anything to do and that anybody wants to talk to me. So thank you for spending some time with me today.
Oh, absolutely. When Civet broke up, because you were just sort of referencing that, and that prompted a question in my head. And you went to school and had a job and a routine. Were you still playing music at all, even for yourself, or writing music at all? Or did you kind of shut that part of your brain off for a while?
I did shut it off for about only 2 years, which seemed like a long time at the time. But now I think about like my life and how that was just such a blip, you know, but I got really into photography at that time. I lived with a couple that were musicians in a band together. So I did a lot of photos for them, went to their shows, but I really I didn't see anybody that I knew like from music, you know, and it was kind of weird. It was like, I almost didn't know who I was anymore. Like I was a completely kind of different version of myself, which I think was actually healthy too, you know, because I started working in television, you know, and being part of like TV show like crew and stuff. And you know, it wasn't like, because sometimes when you're in a band for a really long time, like you sound like an asshole when you're talking about how many times you've gone to Europe, you know, to people who don't know what it's like to ever go to Europe and live out of a bag in a van, you know. So I really needed to not be cool Suzi for a little while and just like get fucking grounded though, you know, and like just be really grateful for like friendships and like hanging out and thrifting and like just like totally normal life stuff. And like I feel now in my 30s like I've got a really good balance of things, you know, like I don't live in Hollywood anymore. I don't have any desire to be like out going to shows every night a week. I'd rather go to like more special shows and like really work on like my friendships, that it's the quality over quantity kind of thing, and that helps me stay on track, helps me stay focused, you know. I've got my cat, I've got my boyfriend, we eat really healthy, you know. It's like this actually in turn makes me a better musician, because I'm not like trying to be everywhere all at once going to everybody else's gig or whatever, you know. So it's just it was definitely a necessary part of my life, but it didn't last for very long because I needed a job, and I ended up working at the Redwood in downtown LA, and they've got live music every single night. And I didn't know it was a punk rock music venue. I was like, oh, it's a restaurant that has music sometimes. And then it was all of a sudden all these people that I knew from Civet were coming in night after night after night. And then I was watching bands, you know, on stage, and I got fucking very jealous very quickly. And I'm like, oh shit. So I like dusted off my guitar and like, I was like, okay, let's do this, you know? Yeah.
Well, and especially when you got into the scene at such an early age, it's almost like, not that it gets out of your system, but when you spend 8 years on the road, by the time you're 22, that probably does very different things to you than somebody who started at 20 even, or 25 or 30 to get into the scene.
Oh, totally.
Like you've been there and done that, and you can barely legally drink at that point.
I know. And I was a good girl too.
It's just,
I really was.
as somebody who, I mean, I was a fan of Civet years ago, and it
Thank
didn't
you.
dawn on me at the time. Like,
Yeah.
you like to think that, I don't know, it's this weird thing where I always assume that musicians are older than me, like,
Mhm.
because I think of myself as a 14-year-old
Because they're like
kid
up
still.
there.
Well, yeah, exactly. And then this weird thing happens where it's not just that the bands are your age, it's that now there's people that are like 10 years younger than you that
Mhm,
are out
mhm.
there play like okay, so I missed that boat entirely. But like, but it's weird to me that that can even be a thing, you know. And
Yeah.
Civet were one of the first bands. I'm like, well, pretty sure they're all like 5 or 10 years younger than me. And I don't know how that makes me, because yeah, I just had this vision of that you guys must be much older than I was. And then I
Sure.
remember
Yeah.
learning how old you weren't. And I went, oh, it's weird.
Okay, blame my sister. She's the one that put me out there.
Did but you had to also get into it. You know what I mean?
I did,
Like
kind of.
you had a choice to not necessarily get into punk rock at 13 or
Yeah.
14 years old. And
Yeah.
as I have a 13-year-old now, and so she's like right on that cusp of, this is when we all found punk rock. And
Yeah.
she's like the furthest thing from listening to punk rock is
Yeah.
like the 13, 14-year-olds of this generation. And I mean, you had the chance to pick something else. What do you
Mhm.
think it, like, what was it about punk rock? Was it seeing your sister playing in bands and being involved in the scene? Did that help? Or were you going to be in punk rock regardless?
Well, I really think that the freedom of it all, you know, the freedom to be yourself was what drew me in, because I loved Britney Spears, and
Yeah.
my first concert ever was Hanson, you know.
Okay.
Big Backstreet. I mean, that's my era,
Right.
you know,
Right.
like that's all those bands, those artists were huge when I was in 5th grade and stuff, you know. And I still to this day really appreciate pop music, and Good Charlotte too, you know. And I guess they were kind of like
They were that bridge.
they were on the
Yeah.
cusp,
Yeah.
you know, because it was like punk, but like cute and safe.
And they were
you
on
know?
MTV. And yeah.
Yes, exactly. And MTV was such a big part of that too. You know, we'd go home and we watch TRL, and there'd be Good Charlotte and Simple Plan and Sum 41, you know, so that pop punk thing was like a really good gateway for me, you know. And still to this day, I mean, shit, Good Charlotte, their harmonies, like they write really, really deliciously delicious harmonies that like a lot of my singing and style and stuff that I learned early on with like how to do things with my voice, like totally came from that band, you know? And it was my sister who said, okay, but now you need to listen to Dwayne Peters, you know, and the Cramps. And I was like, okay, you know, but she gave me my first Charlotte CD too. So she's not like completely out here. But, you know, you really do have to discover for yourself. And, you know, I loved Murder City Devils. They were probably one of the first punk bands that I like obsessed over, you know, just every single song made me feel like this like excitement and this you know, there's like that gritty thing about them. It's kind of dangerous, you know. And so I mean, it was,
and that's the thing that sort of disappeared from the pop punk side of it, right? It's like the pop punk thing was good, and I listened to all of that myself, but it didn't have that sort of dangerous edge to it, you know. Like the most dangerous thing in a Green Day video is like, ooh, Billy Joel walked by a payphone and took the phone off the hook and is like, oh, he's a badass. And it's, wait, like there's this other side to punk rock too. That's
and it's like, I might get hurt tonight. You know, whether it's by someone else's hand or my own hand, you know. And it's like this like kind of honesty like that. We're like, we at the core pretty fucked up, you know. And it's like trying to figure out how to just operate in the world, and you know, an artist's personal, you know, storytelling of that. And that's like what resonates different artists with different people, you know, is their particular view on that thing. But funny story, you know, Warped Tour was such a big thing, you know, and I went to every single Warped Tour religiously. And I remember getting a CD sampler from Victory Records. I don't know if you remember Victory.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And on one side it had Madcap.
Yep.
And on the other side, River City Rebels. Now, I don't know if you remember River City Rebels, but they were on Victory, and they were like a 7-piece, like kind of glam rocky punk rock band. Yeah.
I want to say I had them on a Victory Records sampler myself.
You did. Yeah. You probably had the same one.
It's probably
me,
right over there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I went like ape shit over this band. And they were like my favorite band. I listen to this record every single day, blah, 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 blah. And then I joined Civet, and I'm finally really, really in Civet, you know, and Liza was like, all right, man, we're going on our tour. You ready to go on your first tour ever? And I was like, yeah, sure. Who are we going on tour with, man?
Yeah.
You know, and she's like, Dwayne Peters, Gunfight, and this band River City Rebels. And my brain was like,
that's amazing.
Is this music? In music, you become friends with the people that you love?
Yeah.
Like, no way. And so I think that really solidified it for me. It was like, holy shit, you being a musician, loving music, you meet other musicians because they play music too.
Right.
And we all love it, you know? So fast forward to 2021, and the bass player for the Suzi Moon project is Patti Bo, who played guitar in River City Rebels on my first tour ever.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's like a dream come true.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty freaking cool.
How did that land on your plate?
Facebook keeps people in touch.
Yeah. Right.
You know, Facebook, you know, kept us in touch over these years, and I've stayed in touch with the singer Dan as well, you know, and like I said, I've talked about them in interviews like my entire career, because this one record, Hate to Be Loved, had such a huge influence on me as a teenager. And that when I moved to the East Coast last year, you know, Patti Bo was like, oh shit, hey, what up? And I was like, yeah, what up? You know, he's like, if you ever need a guitar player, and I'm like, I have a guitar player. Yeah. I'm like, bro, but do you play bass? Yeah. You know? And he's like, I can play bass. And I'm like, that's exactly what I said to LA Machina. I was like,
yeah, exactly.
Play bass. Right. You know, if it's the right project. And he's a great bass player. Like, oh my God, total fucking bass player. Yeah. You know? And so between Patti and then my guitar player, Drew, who is also my boyfriend, and then our drummer, Sean, who he and Drew, I met them at Punk Rock Bowling in 2019 because they had a DC punk rock band called the Split Seconds.
Oh yeah.
That played on the same stage as us, you know, and I checked out every band that I was sharing that small stage with, because like that's an opportunity to make new friends and stuff, you know, and I was like listening to every band, you know, and I was like, shit, this Split Seconds band rocks. But same thing, I looked at them and I was like, they look kind of young. Are they teenagers? I don't know what's going on here. And then I met them in person. I was like, oh no, they're some grown ass boys, and they fucking rock, you know. So fast forward like 2.5 years later, and now I've got 2 out of the 4 Split Seconds who they're playing compatibility was already like so tight, you know. And they just fucking both totally rip. And then Patti comes down, and it's like we just have this kind of like punk rock pirate kind of like really organic, natural, like crew vibe, you know. We're like, everyone's got experience and we know what we're doing, and we're not trying to fuck around anymore. It's like, let's just make great music and get it out there.
And it's probably like you all speak the same language, you know what I mean? So it's easy for you to probably explain to them what you want to do and what sound you want to get, and you don't have to like have those weird conversations. They all get it.
They're good musicians, you know. And we have similar influences, and you know, it's great because I can say to Drew, like, Drew, make them do the thing, because I don't speak the drum. I don't speak the drum right now. You know. And just having a teammate, like, and a partner and a crew that, like, you know, like, it's so nice to look over and like the 3 of them are hanging out, and I'm like, those are my boys, you know. And they rule, and I'm like really proud to have them behind me, you know, because it doesn't matter. I can release as many fucking singles or whatever as I want on my own. You're only as good as your band. And I feel so grateful to have like really talented musicians playing with me. And I want people to see it live.
And punk rock is a thing that you have to see live. There are bands that'll put out music and whatever, but they don't play live. And this is not the scene for that. Like you have to play live. And so as good as everything sounds on Call the Shots, especially, it's going to be that much better when you have like that cohesive band playing it.
Totally.
I'm excited
and we're like
for
vibing
you.
off of each other.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wish I was a little bit further south and or not working that
yeah.
weekend.
I know. You know what? We're playing. Well, shit. We're playing in Brooklyn in November again. I don't think we're going up to Boston until next April, but we should be doing a tour kickoff in Boston.
Oh, really?
Next April.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We're running out of places for people to play in Boston, unfortunately. If gentrification wasn't bad enough, COVID kind of slammed the door on a lot of places.
Isn't that so sad? Yeah.
There's one or two that are sort of gasping for air, but
okay.
But so I have friends from like Tennessee, and when they came here a few years ago to see Boston, they had never been here before, and they know the Boston from like The Departed and Dropkick Murphys, and I'm like, okay, that's not what Boston is now, and it hasn't been for 20 years. But it's also like it's really gentrified. It's really most of it is really safe and nice and skyscrapers now and shit. Yeah, it's not the way
it's weird. Yeah, well, same in LA. I lived in Silver Lake, which is like hipster town now, and has been for a long time. But I lived in my first apartment in Silver Lake like 15 years ago when it was sketchy as all hell, Right. And then you go down to Echo Park and you got the real Mexican food stands and like everything's dingy and that's how we liked it,
right?
But they're fucking bulldozing all those old buildings and putting up like fancy, shiny, mirrory looking buildings and throwing a Chipotle in there. It's like Chipotle has no business in Echo Park. Okay. Like we're good. We're covered. Yeah. Please go away. Right. And it's not the same. It's sad because those are areas with so much like culture and history for the city, and you just see that wiped out,
especially culture. Yeah. The art and music scene, that's where it came from.
When it was dangerous.
Right. It didn't come from fancy places with,
I know. It's sad.
There's a time and a place for that. And I don't mind sitting down on a show sometime now that I'm on the other side of 40, but still not at a punk rock show.
Did you grow up in Boston?
I grew up in New Hampshire. So we had to drive like an hour to Boston, or there was a small scene in a city called Portsmouth, which is right on the coast. There was a small scene there because there was a place called the Elvis Room that was only around for a few years, but that's where that was like the secondary market for all the punk rock bands. So we either drove an hour to Boston for all the primary things or an hour to Portsmouth, New Hampshire to the Elvis Room. And now I think the Elvis Room, is like a pizza.
As I wear my Elvis necklace.
Exactly. They had velvet Elvises on the wall. It was a really cool, like interestingly run place, and all the cool bands played there. But we didn't really have a scene so much. So it was either Boston or you drive even further to Providence or sometimes to Hartford because that's all we had. Plus, there were only like 8 punk rock kids at my school, so it didn't matter,
You guys like all caravan on one weekend. You're like,
my buddy had a Plymouth Reliant station wagon with all sorts of stickers on it. It looked like a NASCAR van. And so we would just get in the station wagon and go. Yeah.
Cool. That's rad. Yeah. I was fucking spoiled growing up in LA. It was like every concert ever, just everybody came through there. And even just being like in DC now, anytime, like that's why, we got invited to Hella Mega Tour, and I'm telling Drew, I'm like, we're going. Nothing is stopping us. Like, no, I hadn't considered going before because just the dates didn't line up in my head. Like I didn't really think about it, but as it approached and we got offered to go, I'm like, we have to see a show now because not as many bands come through here, Right. So it's like, you got to see your shows when you can see your shows. Or I'm driving down to North Carolina in September to see White Reaper. Like that's a band that I fucking love, you know, and that's like a 5.5 hour drive or something.
Oh, from DC. Yeah. I'm thinking from here. No, that's like 13 hours, but
yeah, it's so much farther. Yeah. So, you know, but they hardly ever went through LA, and I've only seen them once before, and I'm like,
wow,
it's kind of the closest that they're gonna be.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't know, maybe it makes those shows a little bit more special when you kind of have to work to get to them.
And it's also nice to see the success of a band like the Interrupters opening the Hella Mega Tour at a baseball stadium. That's pretty
I
awesome.
know.
Like
It was amazing.
I've known them for a long time, and they,
Yeah.
because it took a while for them to play on the East Coast because people just don't necessarily. And so I think I've seen pretty much every Interrupters show within like an hour and a half radius of where I am.
Oh, that's great.
I love those guys. That's like
they
they
did
deserve
such a killer job.
Yeah, they deserve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy gig.
No.
That's a big fucking show to perform, you know, and they did such an incredible job just getting everybody fucking hyped.
Yeah.
And they sounded so good, you know, and that was a big part of it.
Right.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
I don't want to take up too much of your evening. I appreciate you doing this. This is a fun conversation.
You,
hopefully people have called the shots. If they don't, I'll link to all of the videos and the places you can buy it. And then we'll stay in touch for when the next EP comes out.
Yeah. It'd be cool to do something when we come up and play there.
Oh,
you know, I'd love for you to meet the whole band.
Absolutely.
You know, because, you know, those guys are cool too.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. And I want you to come and hang out with us. And stuff. Yeah.
Right.
And it'll be after the second EP. So.
Okay. Let me